Make a start. Welcome everyone. If you'd like to turn your videos on, if you've got the bandwidth for it and you're fully dressed, then we'd love to see your smiling faces. If for any reason though it doesn't suit you to turn your camera on, that's fine too. I'd like to actually welcome you and acknowledge that I'm joining from the unceded lands of the Djadja and pay my respect to elders past and present, and to any First Peoples who might be with us on the call tonight as well. And I invite all of you in the chat to acknowledge whose country you're joining from. I think we've been making sure we acknowledge where we're coming from in our meetings online for the period of the pandemic. And I know I've actually deepened my knowledge of the vast number of different countries around Australia, what's now Australia, through doing it. It's been really good to see where people come from and learn those names of places. Where are we? This is like the 26th or 27th Solidarity session for AFSA. And tonight we're really excited to be bringing you a discussion on the legal guide for members. And so I'd like to introduce a couple of people just to start with, and then we'll sort of move in. I've got, well, your screens are all different, but we've got the paralegal team with us here tonight, and that includes Mahalia, if you give a wave, and Freya, give a wave, and Britt, and Burke. So these four wonderful people have been supporting our work for the last, I don't know how long, why don't you tell me?
Since May?
Yes,
or
May.
April, yeah.
Yeah, so we advertised for a paralegal, like a pro bono paralegal role, and we got 4. So we interviewed quite a few more, and then we just went, well, actually, why would you say no to more help for this kind of work? So it's been great having the team help us like progress things more quickly than ever before. I'd also like to introduce, her camera's not working tonight, but I'd like to introduce Shelley Warner. Shell, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone, and I'm very sorry. Yes, my camera is not working, but it's wonderful to be here. And I must say, working with these 4 paralegals has been phenomenal. They're amazing.
So Shell's our supervising lawyer, actually, who's also providing assistance from her firm, Pro Bono. So we have quite a lot of really excellent support now for this work to support our members. And I think we might just, housekeeping. So the normal Zoom rules about, keep your sound off unless you're speaking. Feel free, if you want to poke up a hand and ask a question at any stage, do that with the technology or your actual hand. We'll respond to either. And if you just want to put a question in the chat, feel free to do that as well. And like I said, we love seeing your faces so that it's a friendlier and more inviting environment for all of us, but we understand if you need to have it off because you're eating dinner or somehow indisposed, or your camera just doesn't work. That also happens. So Burke is in charge of our technology tonight and is going to give us some slides to help just with, it's good to have visual learning, not just talking heads. I should say, by the way, I'm Tammy, the president of AFSA. Probably many of you joining tonight would know that, but I'm only one of 10 on our current committee. And actually tonight I saw that we have Eliza's here with us. I don't think the other committee members are able to join tonight. But yeah, it's not, there's a lot of us that do this work and can bring it to you. Everyone's a volunteer except one staff member who couldn't be with us tonight, Jess, who's amazing. If you've been getting more newsletters recently, it's because Jess is a gun and we're all very grateful to have her working with us. So Burke, if you want to pop the first video up.
Yeah.
My video slide. If we just go to the next one. Oh, there you go, the 23rd. So the Legal Defense Fund, it actually started, it was in 2014-15 when the mess around raw milk was going on, and a number of farms were affected by very quick and radical changes to legislation that meant that any loopholes that had been around for raw milk sales as bath milk, etc., were closed immediately. And whatever your views are on raw milk, the rapid change in legislation led to the closure of several dairies. It led to the fining of some dairies. Movio in South Australia ultimately closed. Elgar wasn't even caught up in the raw milk debate. It was pasteurized milk, but they had a problem when the parents were away overseas, and their kids were running the place, and the authorities came in for a regular audit and then convinced the younger generation to hand over their license and reapply. And then, of course, introduced a slew of new requirements, including a brand new, like $60,000, oh no, more, $100 and something thousand pasteurizer. Like, it was extraordinary behavior. And so with all of these activities happening, we made the decision to start the Legal Defense Fund. And in 2015 and 16, we raised about $70,000 through a mixture of in-person and online fundraising. And that gave us a chance to hire our first lawyer, a paralegal at the time as well, subsequently a lawyer, and now a whole paralegal team. So that's the kind of history of where we came from. The reality of what it's meant is our research into the legal requirements for that especially affect small farmers, but really any small food producers, are something we've been working on, supporting members who write to us saying, oh, I'm having a problem with planning, or I'm having a problem with food safety. I want to build a boning room on my property. I'm a small market gardener, and I just got hit with a question around whether I needed a water license. We get quite and increasingly things around land sharing and share farming agreements. So those are the major areas of work the LDF started working on. And we've talked since the beginning about how great it would be to be able to provide templates to the members. And then with this team coming into place, we thought we can actually go better than templates. We can write an entire guide for our members so that you go, well, I've just become a pig farmer. What do I need to know? And etc. Or, I've run into a problem. My counsellor said I need a planning permit and I didn't know I needed that. So what do I do? We will continue to provide the advice through our legal team, but the guide will be like a first stop for people to see if your questions are already being answered. Next slide, Burke, please. So the way we're putting it together at the moment, it will be online. It'll be on the AFSA website, which for those who are more familiar with our work or our website, you'll be pleased to know we have a new one on the way. And it's going to be so amazing. It will accept attempts to join us, for example. Our membership plugin's been faulty for years. So it will also, though, host the legal guide for AFSA members. And one of the things we're interested in feedback on tonight is about the like how you approach looking for this information, so that we can make sure that we are setting up the navigation of the guide in a way that makes sense to the people coming looking for the information you need. So at the current areas that we are drafting, the team is drafting, are around planning and development, employment and volunteering agreements, land and water use, food safety, working with your local council, grounds for review and recourse. And we've put insurance there because it's obviously an increasingly fraught area for our members around being able to have insurance for small scale operations. This is not our area of expertise, and we're just starting to develop more knowledge in that space. So I would say that's very much an emerging area, not something that you should expect us to be very knowledgeable about. I mean, my own personal experience is you have to be insured for as much as you can, but they won't cover anything that will ever actually happen to you. I feel like we could just write that in the guide, and that's my story of insurance. Hopefully, when we do more research, we'll find that's not entirely true. We are going to be launching the first draft at the Food Sovereignty Convergence being held at Echo Valley Farm in southern Queensland on the 17th and 18th of October. Those tickets are about to go live, and we'd love to have people come along. It's the first time Convergence being held on a farm, and that's very exciting. But anyway, more on that later when you can see it. Next slide. And I'm not going to talk the whole time. I'm about to hand over. So I think I'm going to hand this over to Mahalia, who's going to tell you where we're at with planning and development.
Thanks, Tammy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Mahalia, and I've been taking a look at the planning and development aspects of the legal guide. So I guess I'll just give a kind of an overview of what we're thinking of including at this point. So we thought it might be useful to kind of give a broad overview of how to navigate the planning and development systems in each state. So I should mention as well, with the legal guide, we're thinking of kind of starting off with a few states just to start with. So we're going to do Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland and Tassie, just to get us going. So yeah, a broad overview of the planning system, and then also practical steps for accessing planning information for any given council, because there are so many councils in Australia, so it's hard to kind of give the full picture for every single council, but just at least steps for how you can access that. As well, we would have kind of information on the types of farming that you're allowed to do in different zones and different overlays in each of the states we're covering, and whether you would need a permit for that type of farming. And finally, we'd kind of want to include some of the processes for getting planning approval. So preparing your application, what the timelines might look like, and also how to maybe challenge a decision if you get a decision that you're not happy with or seems unreasonable. So yeah, so overall, the guide would kind of, I guess, try and demystify the planning systems as they apply to farming and production. It's obviously a really big area, so definitely welcome any insights or input as to the kind of information that would be most useful to farmers and any kind of specific issues that people might have experienced. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mahalia. And thanks for reminding everyone, or letting everyone know we're starting with those 4 eastern states. And that's certainly not about a lack of interest in the others, but it's just what resources we have to start with, and then we'll build it across the West as well. I would also say we have already started making examples of planning applications, development applications available to AFSA members. So in particular, we got our permit for farming pigs here a few months ago, where we've been farming pigs for 11 years. So the Jonai planning permit is available for any Victorian pig farmers who would like to just basically copy it as a template. And I anticipate increasingly, as we build up a database of members who have had successful applications, that we would be making those available as well. We want to stop this culture of paying consultants $15,000 to write everybody's planning applications when they're actually very, very similar in terms of meeting the legislative requirements. So we might, I think if you have questions as we go along, like I said, if I might not be able to see your question. Hang on.
If we get one, I'll read it out.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, so feel free to pop it in the chat or put your hand up as we go. But otherwise, we'll just kind of keep cruising on. Also, initially the session said it was going to be 6:30 to 8, but these are normally 6:30 to 7:30. So unless you all have burning questions and we end up hanging out here until 8, we'll probably finish up by 7:30 tonight, and you'll be able to have your dinner. Do you want to go to the next slide, Burke? Okay, I think Britt is going to talk to us about employment and volunteerships.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany, and I'm addressing the issue of employment and volunteering agreements. This stemmed from actually receiving a member inquiry about how they should best approach setting up a volunteer and intern agreement. As a result, we thought this would be really beneficial to include in our guide. We're hoping actually to draft up a mock employment volunteer agreement so that our members can use that as a guide when they're going through this process. In the guide, we discussed the importance of setting up a volunteer-intern agreement between the farmer and the volunteer/intern. We addressed the importance of addressing the scope of the relationship and the need to have some formal written and signed agreement to formalise the relationship. Then we go on to break down the different components of the agreement. In the guide so far, we're addressing basically what is an agreement, what circumstances should use an agreement. We also address what should be included in the agreement, the need to attain volunteer details, and then we move on to the issue of insurance, as we identified this as a really important part of the farmer-volunteer relationship, and basically ensuring that you're covered for any injuries on the farm, and also any claims of negligence that may arise. So yeah, in the guide, we really formalise the volunteer intern relationship.
Thanks, Britt. And again, on that one, I would add that unpaid internships are actually not legal under the Fair Work Act. And so in the small scale farming movement, I think people loosely use the term intern, not irregularly. And yet really a lot of those agreements are in fact volunteerships, and there's still guidance around those things, and we'll be including that in the guide too, so people understand their responsibilities as well as what you can do. All right, Burke.
All right, I think this is me again.
Yes.
So I guess this is just kind of some other land use issues beyond just planning and development. So we know that kind of farming on other people's land can pose some potential legal issues. So for the legal guide, we're hoping to kind of give some guidance for farmers and producers who are looking to establish a land share or share farming agreement. And the other issue that we've kind of identified is around water rights. So we thought it would be useful to give an explanation of the water licensing system in each state, how water allocations work, and the potential costs of irrigation, which Tammy has just informed us can potentially be quite high. So yeah.
Yeah, and you might fall into needing a water license without realizing it. So we'll make sure that that's clear for people where that's the case. I would also just draw your attention. I think Burke could throw the link in there to our land sharing guidelines that we've already written. So I think it was last year or the year before, we wrote up guidelines around if you're going to be farming on somebody else's land, some guidance in how to draw up that agreement. We've already done that. And the land sharing and share farming agreements, we're being directed by our First Peoples First strategy. And so when you are going into an agreement to share land or to share farm together, the land should be guiding you in your decision-making process, including in any sort of clauses around dissolving the relationship, that the land's needs need to be taken into priority, not only the humans. So you'll see more and more of that sort of coming through in the guidance that we're trying to provide. I do see a question from Lizzie.
Yeah.
Are you connecting risk management with the volunteer employment agreements? Due diligence and risk management planning, etc., will likely be questioned by insurers. FarmSafe already have good resources to connect with, for example. Do one of you want? I think that the answer is yes. Have you started any of that research? Do you have anything to say about risk management? I remember we talked about you have to do sort of a like a risk register. You walk around with volunteers and make sure that you've identified risks with them. Otherwise, you can be found negligent in not showing them what the risks are. And work cover won't cover volunteers, but your public liability can. It's my understanding.
Yeah, I think it's something I'd be happy to support your research in.
Great.
Need support there.
That would be great. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hi, Lizzie. Nice to see you. That would be great. All right, Brooke. Yes, so insurance, basically, as I said, this is an emerging area of concern for us. You know, like you probably, we've seen news of claims being denied for people who have small scale business running out of their residence. And we've been putting out inquiries to find out whether we've had members affected. And I think we all have concerns about insurance probably, but I feel like we're in a brand new era where it's just getting worse because of climate change and pandemics, and the capacity to be insured is getting harder. So we'll be looking into this to see what can we do to help our members make sure that you're insured against the disasters that are kind of increasing in pace around here. But that's very much a watch this space. I don't have much to say on insurance at this stage.
Alrighty, this
Yeah.
is me. So I'm Freya. I'm speaking to you from the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. So basically, what we want to do here is just provide like an overview of all licenses that you need to do anything really, and the costs that are associated with that and any steps that you have to go through to get these. We'll also be providing links to any of the relevant legislation so you can see exactly what legislative requirements there are and where in the Act it comes from, and also links to all of the websites that you need and the application forms and all that kind of thing. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop for everything there. We also will provide, Tammy's going to provide an example of the Victorian costs of auditing, because audits are a super necessary part of all of this, but I would love to include that for all of the states so it's super clear at the outset what your costs will be going into applying for these licenses.
Yeah.
The way that we've got it set up at the moment is I've kind of broken it down by state and then by activity, and then by what license you need. But we've sort of been talking about potentially it being more accessible to break it down in terms of what activity you are undertaking as a farmer. And then once you get into that area, it has the licenses that you need. It has all of the animal requirements that you need to fill, for example, pick tags or animal registration and all of that stuff in one area. So we're just sort of figuring that out. So if anyone has any suggestions for that, that would be really helpful. We also will be including OH&S in this section, and any animal welfare standards and food safety schemes, just to make it super clear kind of what the standard is that you need to adhere to for any sort of licensing requirement on any animal. And yeah, as I said, we'll be putting in a section about animals, specific animal requirements. So that might be registering your flock or your beehives or getting pick tags or any of that kind of thing. That'll all be super clear as well. And I suppose something I just want to note is that obviously this area is changing a lot with legislation and different requirements and regulations being put in. So I guess that will be something that will be constantly updated in the guide as there are changes and different laws are gazetted as it goes on. So that will be something that will just keep getting updated. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Freya. And your mention of animal welfare reminded me. So the federal government's just released new animal welfare standards and guidelines for poultry. And we made a submission to that process and objected to a few things. One of which was the prohibition of feeding poultry outside. And that didn't make it into a standard, but they did put that in a guideline. And our concern is that guidelines sometimes elevate in the next round of reforms to be standards. And it's something that actually happened in Indonesia after H5N1. They banned backyard poultry, basically, claiming that backyard poultry are the biosecurity risk. We have quite a raft of evidence that that's not true. And that, you know, the rise of novel diseases is coming from intensive livestock production. And so we're actually about to call for a Senate inquiry into the role of intensive livestock production and the rise of zoonotic diseases. And we're hoping to get one of the senators to get that up for us. And I mentioned that as well for two things. One is we'll constantly be informing our members, as we already do, about changes to these kinds of standards or any legislation. But we also are constantly lobbying. We've put in like over 50 government submissions in the last 7 years alone to try and make things friendlier for small scale farming and where appropriate, more closely regulate intensive livestock or intensive agriculture of any sort, really. So the relationship between the legal work and that lobbying and advocacy work is really strong. And we do try to take it into campaign issues where it's appropriate. Oh yeah, this one's for me. Working with your local council. Like, I'm quite expert at working poorly with my council and well with my council. I've got better over the years and learned to work more in a more friendly manner. So, and I would recommend from the beginning that working with your council in a friendly manner is a good thing to do. And it can be hard because councils are really difficult spaces. You know, you have the relationship between council officers and councillors, and you may not like your councillors, you may not like your council staff, like, but none of that really matters. At the end of the day, they're there to administer certain local laws or planning legislation or environmental health legislation, and you should just do what you can to have friendly relations with those people and understand the ways that their departments interact or don't. There's the, economic development. If you're building, I can give some very personal examples. If you're saying we're building a boning room, we're going to have a butcher shop and people are going to be able to visit the farm anytime. This is us 10 years ago. Economic development go, great. And then a week later, planning turns up your door and says, you're building what? And we're like, wait, why did they said they were going to be supportive and helpful? Why did they send you? And then you have to learn to work with the planners. And I think that that's something you should do from the beginning as well. No planning law. Like if you're going to do any sort of activity, read the legal guide, talk to some of our team about how to approach this, like what your requirements are going to be, and then go openly to your council. You can have a pre-application meeting without prejudice and say, these are my plans, and they can't sort of stop you at that point. They're meant to just guide you on what else you might need to know before you put in your application. And being on the front foot and always be enthusiastic is my my general approach. And then of course you've got the environmental health officers who are there to make sure that you keep running a safe facility. If you've got if you're registered as a food premises, such as butcher shops or delis or cafes or any of those. That is another thing I will say. We just won a change that the VFMA and AFSA both had been lobbying for a reform to the legislation that controls the sale of packaged meat from farm gate shops. And we had been advocating for a long time that that should be a class 3 registration with your council, not a prime safe license as though you're a butcher shop if it's already coming to you packaged. And as of April 2023, you will be allowed to store and distribute from a farm gate shop packaged meat without having a butcher shop license. That passed through Parliament 2 months ago, I think it was. So that's exciting news, and will be a huge benefit to our small scale farmers who not everybody has to have a butcher shop on their farm. Having, a safe fridge from which you distribute meat is sufficient. I think that's probably enough on working with council. I say be enthusiastic and positive. It can be hard, but I still recommend it.
The next area,
Yeah, go.
The next area we are going to discuss in our guide is the topic of grounds for review. So we're basically addressing the best avenues that are suited to resolve any disputes that a farmer may face. So this will depend on the type of legal dispute in question. We identified that common types of disputes that farmers face may include planning permit disputes, shared tenancy disagreements, VCAT applications, and any applications to local council. So far in the Defence Guide, we've addressed the following topics. Firstly, applications to Agricultural Victoria. Ag Victoria can provide advice to farmers on a range of topics, including feeding, planning and pasture recovery, supply, feed and water to livestock, land and farm and water management, as well as general technical issues. Next, we address the Victorian Ombudsman. We discuss how the Victorian Ombudsman can be used to make any complaints about an action or a decision made by a Victorian public organisation. We go into the process of how to actually submit this application to the Victorian Ombudsman for review. We also address how to approach VCAT, VCAT being the tribunal that assists farmers with the resolutions of issues, including the use, development and subdivision of land. We discuss how to lodge an application with VCAT and what they will and won't assist with. Finally, we discuss dispute settlement issues. So we've discussed fencing disputes and how to tackle and approach this issue between farmers, as well as any tree disputes. And we're also going to look into the concept of mediation and how this could be used to assist farmers and how to approach shared tendency disagreements. And finally, the purpose of the environmental court.
Fantastic. Thanks, Britt. And although those were a number of Victorian examples, of course, they'll be replicated up the other states with the appropriate bodies. So I guess this is the chance for you to tell us what gaps you've noticed, like the thing that you came here thinking, they're definitely going to be covering me for this, and that we might have missed, or areas that you'd like us to think about researching further, but also to Freya's question about how do you think you might possibly approach a legal guide looking for information so that we can do our best to develop it in such a way that it's logical, that it's, intuitive, that you come to it saying, I can find this information, as opposed to, we've all been on plenty of websites where it's very hard to find information. So we don't want to build one of those. No questions or comments?
I have a question. Sorry, it's Lizzie.
Yep.
Sorry, I was late. So I missed, will it be an active web page that people have access to, or is it?
Yes,
like
it'll be
web page.
No, it's going to be it's going to be part of the new AFSA website. So there'll be a tab, and it is going to be for members only. So because obviously it costs us a lot of resources to be able to develop these things. But yes, you'll be able to just click through, and I guess that's one of my questions is like, when I think about us 11 years ago, I would have come saying, we're pig farmers. What do we need to know? Like it would have been literally, what do I need to know?
Do you have a team looking at that usability, how to design it from that perspective?
Well, only insofar as we have the website developers who are building this for us, but they're not necessarily expert in like a legal guide.
I think we've had a few ideas, like there was sort of should it be just a static document like a PDF, and then people can access it as like a whole guide. But I think what we have been workshopping is that it would be better to have headings, which is why I think why we wanted to know what category to organize things would be better, but to have headings that you can then click through, which will then lead to so more like kind of a click through situation with like a whole kind of umbrella menu sort of thing, to then make it super clear where the different topics are, and then you can just go to exactly where you need to go rather than digging through information to find what specifically suits you.
Yeah.
You might find that easier to maintain information.
I think so.
Doing it that way too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I see a question there from Georgina Johnson. What direction do you feel legislation is trending on a whole when it comes to small scale producers? Do you feel roadblocks are being removed as people understand the role small scale farmers play, or is it getting harder? I am a born and active optimist, but I am also going to say on the base of evidence that it's actually getting better in some places, and Victoria is one of them. And that is because small scale farmers here have had a really strong voice, really since AFSA had more farmers on the committee, because we've had, actually not necessarily the majority for a while, but we have always had farmers in Victoria on the committee. And so I think we've made the most headway. And I mean, I've been president for longer than any of us care to remember. So, and I live in Victoria. So we've had great success here. We won those LDMO guidelines, the low density mobile outdoor guidelines for pig and poultry in 2018. And that was a significant improvement for our farmers. And off the back of that came the artisanal agriculture grants, which the minister congratulated AFSA for getting, because she said, we put small scale farmers on the map for the politicians, and that achieved now a total recognition of our role in the food system. And of course, we've seen with the pandemic, the things that we said to them before the pandemic about the vulnerability of local food economies from long supply chains has all come true. And now, because we had been saying that to them for a very long time in advance, when it came true, they said, oh, well, maybe they know what they're talking about. So I think in Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland, we're making kind of steady headway. The Victoria, definitely the fastest headway. Tassie, not really. We haven't had much interaction with the Tasmanian government, and the federal government until recently didn't want to talk to us at all. But having said that, again, we're invited to. We don't have to go chasing them. We are invited to submit on pretty much every inquiry that is going through in agriculture in Australia these days. So I think, to me, that's a sign that it's going really well, that we our members as a constituency are recognised and considered important stakeholders in these discussions. AgVic doesn't approach a new piece of legislation that might have any impact on small-scale farmers without asking us for our input first. So that's pretty wonderful, and was not the case 6 or 7 years ago even.
That's great, Tammy. Thanks. I can talk now because now I'm not eating. In terms of, just a quick follow-up on that, in terms of land planning and the encroachment crawl on peri-urban and urban sort of areas going out to that small-scale farming area, especially around Victoria, New South Wales. I recently got back from Canada, where they've been doing a lot of work on that about protecting small-scale farmers. And we've come back here and it seems to be quite a common issue, especially up here in the Northern Rivers. Do you feel, I'm going to be moving back down south shortly with my partner, and I think it's a topic that people are talking about increasingly. Do you feel that that's going in a positive direction, or do you feel as though the lines are getting finer in terms of
I would not be
your side of it
about that one, Georgina? I really think I think those pressures are going to continue, and we have some amazing allies. You know, the folks at Melbourne Uni who've been doing the Melbourne Food Print project.
Yeah, Rachel. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've been doing amazing work trying to hold those lines. But
yeah,
I think with increasing population pressures and government still far too influenced by developers and the money that brings into state, budgets, I think that's a real battle. And one that we'll continue fighting. There's an area of work that we've been doing a little bit of work on. There's been a lot of rezoning from farming zone to rural conservation and rural living. And those zones are pretty terrible for small scale farmers. So a lot of our value adding stuff that's been happening with boning rooms, for example, is prohibited it's a prohibited use in the rural conservation zone. And so that's, if we want to increase the resilience of our local food economies, we need more infrastructure, not less. So we need to, what I guess the battle we're trying to hold is, don't let them rezone. If we can at least hold the farming zone in as farming, that might be an area that we could continue to win. But then they reset urban growth boundaries all the time. So it's really hard. It's a very difficult area, I think. And it's
also not spoken about. People don't really talk about it when they talk about food security, because land planning taxation isn't really a sexy subject compared to, food policy and all the other things that we find exciting. So maybe that's a note that everyone can take as well, to sort of try and interweave that into our conversations.
Yeah, and I think it's something you can talk to your local councillors about, because I think local councils have a role to play in advocating for maintaining the rural characters and the capacity to farm in their shires. So I think making sure that's on your councillors' sort of radar is also something we can all be doing. We certainly do here a lot.
Well, it started to happen up here. They've just employed someone to create relationships with private landowners to employ farmers to be able to donate certain amounts of plots of their land. But that's a very hard thing to sell past the council still, even though we've got a representative actually on the board. So something to strive for. Yes, that is Andrew. Yes.
Yeah, he's doing great work from the inside, but but it's hard, isn't it?
It's really hard.
I mean, you're in a terrible area for development. Yeah,
it's a prime example, and we're just about to set up a young farmers incubator program actually at the farm, with all of the barriers to planning and development removed, to try and get people back onto the land. But this is why I joined this, to understand as a representative what resources are available, because the hardest conversations are actually having resources to give people. So this is fantastic, because a lot of people are in the position to not be able to afford the advice. So it's great.
That's
well
right.
Done, guys.
We don't want that to be the case. Yeah, thanks, Georgina. That's perfect. That's great. It's those kind of members. That's who we're doing it for too. And yes, Walter, of course, member includes farmers and allies. So you don't have to be a farmer to have access to the legal guide, because there are non-farmers who need access to this information too. You just have to be a member of any sort. And yes, Casey, I see in yours the pre-planning for the property. What state are you in, Casey? And I'm wondering if we could give you a hand. So there's a lot happening in New South Wales. Yeah, if you want to drop us an email, we can, since we're still working on the guide, we can certainly point you in the right direction for the information you need to know to work on your planning application. And yes, Josh, so I think we've been, in terms of, so Josh asked whether there'll be a section where members can see other share farming agreements. And yes, so the ones that we have already been given permission to de-identify and share, we've already started sharing. I think Josh lives just over the volcano from me. I can ask you later whether Jess sent you those copies. So we can share those already, but we will put them available on the website for members. There's going to be a whole members section on the new website. Now, Simone and Sadie, I love your leaving, not leaving. That's great. I'm glad you stayed. Templates for land sharing agreements. Do you have any templates for collective agreements or groups of producers that aren't necessarily based on the same site? There's many examples of style farming in the US, but I've struggled to find examples of agreements here in Australia. No, we don't have any of them on different sites, but I know the projects that you're working on. We could have a chat about what sort of information would be helpful, Simone, to see how we could support that. Because if farmers are working together across sites, then they'll have, obviously there's different landholders in that case, as well as the share farming arrangement between the multiple farmers. So that's definitely something we could help develop. And it would be of interest. Yeah, that already sounds interesting to me. And then Lizzie said already, oh, you're interested in the same with the co-op up there, the Soil City Cooperative. Cool. Oh, well, that's two of you who want to know this information. So sounds like we'd better get on it. Have you guys taken note of that one in the land one? Great. And Josh shared something from Young Farmers Connect. So there's a link there to, oh, this is the Canadian Young Agrarians. That's cool. That's helpful. And yes, you can email us at legal@AFSA for any of these questions. Yeah, Walter, we know. That's why Kate and Don are building us a new website, because the membership plugin has a very high strike rate for people trying to join. It's not very good for a membership-based organization. Hence, we're investing in a new website. Christy, and sorry, I should say, Walter, Jess would be mad at me if I didn't. If you email admin@AFSA, she can also just send you an invoice and put you into the system manually if you're having trouble with the plugin. Because I know previously you were a member anyway, so I don't even get reminders from the website to rejoin. I have to manually find out every year when I need to rejoin. Now, Christy Lewis, an organization of information, being able to click through sections based on the topic would be great. Might be handy to have an option to download a section as a PDF for searching, reading through. That's right. I think we are talking about that, having some downloadable PDFs. Yeah. And actually, I agree with that. So like, if you came to it saying, I'm farming pigs, what do I need to know? Then you follow that kind of path. But then you could also just have in the sidebar, licenses, planning legislation, so that you could go, well, I actually know I have a planning issue, so I could jump over there and find out that way. Yeah. And content what you have sounds great. Someone new to market gardening. Yeah, and it's been most difficult trying to understand if how we are allowed to sell spinach leaves in bags and understand how it differs by distribution method. Yes, well, we will take that one on notice because we just managed to, the new standards just came in that we're going to require a license to sell lettuce, and they were going to have a whole new development of SOPs and QA programs. And we fought it sort of tooth and nail for small scale market gardens because it's the big intensive farms where there have been outbreaks. It's not coming from little market gardens. The question of whether you can sell it in bags is a good question. So can we take that on notice and get back to you? Yeah, really happy to find out. What state are you in, Christy? Tassie. Okay, great. Well, look, I mean, that'll be, is it a FSANS thing or is it a local health officer thing? We can look into it. It'll be one or the other or both. Local, yep. I'm trying to catch up. There's been lots of, oh, and yes, I've just been reminded too, if anyone has an urgent legal issue that you need an answer to, you can always email legal at AFSA and one of us will get back to you, or one of the paralegals or Shelley and her team at her firm, somebody will get back quickly if there's an urgent concern. At the moment, we don't have a hotline because we have a whole team, but it's something that we could also reintroduce if we thought there was a lot going on. And people needed to be able to, you know, in America, they always have the hotline because the food police actually come and destroy all your food. But we have less issues with that here. You've got a link there to become a member if you're not already, if it works. If it doesn't, email admin at AFSA and we'll do what we can to help you be a member. Thanks, Simone. Good to see you here. And yeah, the JavaScript. Look, I'm not going to lie, the website thing has been terrible for so long. At least it's not like the year where you got pop-up porn when you tried to join. And that happened right as we were going to our AGM and everyone was trying to rejoin. And then they were sending me screenshots. And I'm like, I don't want to see, but you're meant to, this is meant to help you solve the problem. Yeah, I still didn't want it. It's just a JavaScript error, not so bad. Any other questions or recommendations of what you think should go in the guide? You've already given us quite a lot of good ones that we hadn't covered. This has been really helpful. No? Cool. Well, I think that means that our job is to get back to it and get you this guide as soon as we can. I think that we are hoping to have a draft guide to have some of the lawyers have a look at by mid-September, and then a full draft, like actual for release to the members by Convergence in the middle of October. So pretty exciting. Oh God, universal basic insurance. I think I agree with you, Walter. I've been considering just putting our insurance payments into a savings account where, you know, I could agree to cover what needed insurance if something happened. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I think we might say goodnight, and I look forward to, you know, AFSA being able to deliver this guide to you. That's been a long time coming. So thanks for all of your support, and thanks for those who've been members for a long time here, and for the good work you're doing in farming and food systems across Australia. It's pretty exciting time to see the growth of our movement, and to be in a position and to have an organization able to support that growth in our movement. You know, many farmers will actually change things, I think. So keep up the good work at home. Let us know whatever you need, and we'll do everything we can to help. Thanks so much to Mahalia and Freya and Britt and Burke and Shelley for all the work that you're doing too.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Oh, yes. And Josh is right about the farm household allowance. We should, you guys put that on there. We should actually put that on sooner rather than later, just to don't forget about Salt. My dog is at Josh's house. Yeah, so we should put something about farm household allowance on there straight away to help farmers in need.
Mhm.
Good. All right.
Great.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
might go get my dog from Josh's.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks so much, Shell. And thanks, you guys. You did a great job with all the
Yeah.
No worries. Thank you.
Beautiful work. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
See you, Tammy.
Bye.
Bye,
Thanks,
team.
everyone.